In the relentless, hyper-stimulated, and profoundly chaotic landscape of the modern world, the average man is biologically and psychologically conditioned from the moment he wakes up to the moment he falls asleep, to be in a constant, exhausting state of heightened emotional reactivity, a fragile, desperate state of existence where his attention is aggressively hijacked by algorithms engineered by billionaires. His deepest insecurities are weaponized by marketers trying to sell him solutions to problems he did not know he had, and his precious peace of mind is constantly held hostage by the unpredictable, often hostile, and entirely self-serving behaviors of the people around him, creating a tragic, invisible prison where the vast majority of men live their entire lives as mere emotional puppets, dancing frantically and pathetically to the discordant tunes played by external circumstances, completely blind to the terrifying fact that they have willingly handed over the remote control of their own nervous system to a world that fundamentally does not care about their well-being, their potential, or their sanity. But nearly 2,000 years ago, sitting in a freezing, mud-soaked military tent on the brutal, blood-stained front lines of the Germanic wars, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius recorded a series of private, agonizingly honest reflections that would eventually become the ultimate, timeless, and completely indestructible blueprint for reclaiming this lost psychological sovereignty. Fundamentally realizing that while a man may possess absolute, dictatorial power over the entire known world, commanding vast, heavily armored legions and shaping the course of human history, with a single wave of his hand, he is essentially nothing more than a pathetic, powerless slave if he cannot command the impulses of his own mind. A profound, philosophical revelation that forms the absolute bedrock of Stoic philosophy and introduces the single most devastating, transformative, and liberating psychological weapon a man can ever wield in the face of chaos: the absolute, uncompromising, and impenetrable power of the non-reaction. To truly comprehend the massive, paradigm-shifting weight of this ancient concept, you must first peer beneath the hood of human nature. Understand the intense, hardwired biological mechanics of why you react the exact way you do when you're insulted, challenged, passed over, or blatantly disrespected. Your brain is equipped with an ancient, primitive threat detection center called the amygdala, an evolutionary alarm bell which was perfectly designed over millions of years to keep your hunter-gatherer ancestors alive in a brutal, unforgiving environment filled with literal, physical predators, instantly flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline at the very first sign of rustling leaves or a snapping twig, initiating the violent fight-or-flight response to ensure physical survival. But in the modern, civilized, and highly complex social world, where physical predators have been almost entirely replaced by insidious psychological predators, toxic co-workers seeking to climb over you, arrogant bosses demanding submission, manipulative partners testing your boundaries, and anonymous internet trolls projecting their own self-hatred onto you. This ancient biological alarm system misfires constantly and catastrophically, interpreting a sarcastic comment, a subtle eye roll, an unreturned text message, or a condescending tone of voice as a literal, physical threat to your life and existence, causing your heart to race, your palms to sweat, your vision to narrow, and your rational, logical, highly evolved prefrontal cortex to completely shut down, leaving you entirely at the mercy of your raw, unfiltered, and usually highly destructive emotional impulses. When a disrespectful, envious, or manipulative person intentionally provokes you, they are not acting randomly. They are executing a highly calculated, often subconscious predatory maneuver designed specifically to trigger this exact biological response, essentially hacking into your nervous system to bypass your rational defenses and force you to expel your vital masculine energy in a loud, defensive, and completely useless display of anger, frustration, or frantic justification. Because toxic individuals are fundamentally empty vessels, severely lacking the internal substance, discipline, and character required to generate their own power, and must therefore parasitically siphon it from the reactive, emotionally undisciplined people around them by creating artificial chaos, instigating conflict, and feeding off the resulting emotional friction like vampires feeding on blood. The precise, fatal moment you take the bait, the very second you raise your voice to match theirs, break your calm, grounded posture to lean in defensively, or engage in a frantic, heated, logical argument to defend your fragile ego against their fabricated and entirely meaningless attacks, you have instantly lost the war, regardless of how clever your comeback is, how factually accurate your statements are, or how logically sound your argument might be. Because by the mere act of reacting, you have implicitly validated their power over you. You have confirmed to them and to yourself that their meaningless words possess the actual capacity to alter your internal reality. And you have willingly stepped down from your kingly throne to wrestle in the filthy mud with a peasant who has absolutely nothing to lose and who actually enjoys the dirt. Marcus Aurelius understood this tragic, degrading dynamic perfectly, recognizing through decades of intense self-scrutiny that the human ego is a fragile, demanding, and utterly insatiable tyrant that constantly seeks external validation and violently, loudly rejects any perceived slight to its imaginary status, which is exactly why he famously wrote in his private journal, The Meditations, that you always have the power to simply have no opinion about a thing, to completely and utterly refuse to let it upset your soul, a radical, almost superhuman level of psychological detachment that requires you to mentally step back from the burning building of your own emotions and observe the flames with the cold, analytical curiosity of a visiting scientist rather than the frantic, weeping panic of a helpless victim. This profound practice is fundamentally rooted in the core Stoic concept popularized by Epictetus known as the dichotomy of control, the absolute non-negotiable and terrifyingly stark division of the entire universe into two distinct categories: the things that are entirely within your direct power, which strictly include your own thoughts, your chosen beliefs, your internal values, and your voluntary actions, and the things that are entirely outside your power, which include your external reputation, your physical health, the state of the economy, the shifting of the weather, and, most importantly and most relevantly, the words, actions, opinions, and judgments of absolutely every single other human being on the face of the earth. The average unawakened man suffers endlessly and needlessly because he desperately, frantically tries to control the uncontrollable, exhausting his finite life force in a futile, lifelong campaign to force other people to respect him, to make them understand his point of view, to ensure they treat him fairly, and to manipulate their perception of him. A deeply tragic, Sisyphean task that only guarantees a life of perpetual frustration, chronic anxiety, and burning resentment. But the truly powerful man, the man who has actively cultivated the unshakable mindset of the Roman emperor, completely and permanently withdraws his vital energy from the chaotic, unpredictable external world and focuses it entirely, with laser-like precision, on the fortification of his own mind, meticulously constructing what the French philosopher Pierre Hadot famously called the inner citadel, an impenetrable, towering psychological fortress that can withstand the most brutal, relentless sieges of fate, tragedy, betrayal, and human malice without suffering a single microscopic breach in its massive stone walls. When you do the hard, grueling internal work to build this inner citadel, your entire relationship with disrespect, provocation, and human stupidity undergoes a massive, permanent, and deeply liberating transformation. You begin to view the angry, toxic, or manipulative people in your life not as powerful, intimidating adversaries who must be defeated or outsmarted, but as broken, unactualized, and deeply pitiable individuals who are entirely enslaved by their own unmanaged passions. Men and women who are essentially suffering from a severe, contagious psychological illness that compels them to blindly spread their misery to anyone weak enough to accept the infection. Marcus Aurelius explicitly advised himself each morning before stepping out of his tent to rule the empire, to fully expect to meet the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the dishonest, the jealous, and the surly, forcefully reminding himself that these people act this way because they are fundamentally ignorant of what is truly good and what is truly evil. A profound, empathy-laced shift in perspective that entirely replaces the hot, reactive, and destructive emotion of anger with the grounded, dominant, and untouchable emotion of pity. Because it is biologically and psychologically impossible to feel genuinely threatened, insecure, or defensive against someone whom you sincerely, deeply pity from the bottom of your heart. Imagine the incredible, almost terrifying power of a man who is completely and utterly immune to insults. A man who can stand perfectly still, his feet rooted to the earth, while a chaotic, deeply insecure individual screams directly in his face, hurls vicious personal accusations, and desperately attempts to trigger every single childhood insecurity. And yet, this man simply breathes deeply into his diaphragm. His heart rate remains a steady, rhythmic drumbeat. His facial muscles remain completely relaxed, his eyes remain calm, dark, and unblinking, and he offers absolutely zero emotional resistance, allowing the attacker's frantic, toxic energy to crash against him like weak, formless water against a massive, ancient, unmovable cliff face, ultimately exhausting itself and receding back into the pathetic ocean of its own irrelevance. This level of absolute non-reaction is the ultimate, undefendable, and completely devastating power move in any social, professional, or romantic dynamic. Because the manipulative, disrespectful person completely relies on your predictable, emotional, culturally conditioned script to maintain their fragile illusion of control, fully expecting you to either cower in submissive fear or erupt in chaotic anger. But when you mercilessly rip that expected script to shreds, by offering them complete, unbothered, and deafening silence, you violently force them into a terrifying, uncharted psychological territory where their usual weapons have absolutely no effect, triggering a massive, internal, suffocating panic within their own mind as they are forced to realize that they are entirely powerless against your sovereign, deeply fortified consciousness. It is absolutely vital, however, to intimately understand that true Stoic non-reaction is not about being a passive, spineless doormat who blindly accepts abuse, nor is it about dangerously suppressing your natural emotions until they rot into a toxic, hidden, and highly acidic resentment that eventually destroys your physical health, your nervous system, and your relationships from the inside out. Rather, it is about consciously, deliberately, and forcefully creating a massive, highly intentional space between the external stimulus that hits you and your internal response to it, a sacred, timeless psychological pause, where your rational, executive mind regains total control of the chariot, objectively assesses the reality of the situation without the blinding filter of ego, and decides what action, if any, is actually required to resolve the issue in a way that aligns perfectly, seamlessly, and beautifully with your highest moral values and your ultimate long-term goals. If a boundary truly needs to be set to prevent further transgression, you do not set it with the screaming, frantic, high-pitched energy of a victim who has been deeply wounded, but rather, you set it with the cold, unfeeling, and absolute precision of a master surgeon holding a scalpel, delivering your words slowly, clearly, and completely devoid of any emotional charge, proving definitively to the aggressor that your boundary is not a defensive, fearful reaction to their behavior, but rather an immovable, objective, and deeply gravitational law of your personal reality that they have foolishly, ignorantly violated at their own peril. This absolute mastery of the pause, this legendary ability to separate stimulus from response, requires immense, agonizing, and daily practice. A strict, almost monastic ascetic discipline that begins the very moment you wake up and extends into absolutely every minor, irritating frustration of your day, starting with the agonizing traffic jam that makes you late for an important meeting, the rude, dismissive barista who messes up your morning coffee order, the passive-aggressive, politically charged email from a jealous colleague trying to undermine your project, and the endless, mindless, algorithmically optimized provocations of social media, all of which must be completely reframed and viewed not as annoying, unfair obstacles to your personal happiness, but as literal, heavy, necessary repetitions in the iron gym of your own mind, providing you with perfect, tailor-made opportunities to aggressively train your neurobiology, to remain calm, centered, and fully operational under continuously increasing levels of external stress. Every single time you successfully override the primal, screaming urge to react, every single time you consciously choose heavy, pregnant silence over a clever, biting, and ultimately useless verbal retort, every single time you let an unwarranted insult simply hang, the empty air until it becomes so painfully, overwhelmingly awkward for the desperately insecure person who said it that they are forced to sit in the toxic stew of their own embarrassment, you are literally, physically rewiring the complex neural pathways of your own brain, physically shrinking the reactive, fearful mass of the amygdala, and simultaneously strengthening the rational, calculating, executive functioning of the prefrontal cortex fundamentally and permanently altering your baseline personality from one of fragile, easily triggered reactivity to one of dense, heavy, and absolutely undeniable psychological power. As you continuously cultivate this incredible, rare skill, enduring the discomfort of biting your tongue until the discipline becomes second nature, you will inevitably and undeniably begin to notice a profound, almost magical shift in exactly how the external world chooses to interact with you. A subtle but massive tectonic realignment of the underlying social dynamics in every room you enter, as people begin to subconsciously, biologically sense the sheer, unmovable density of your presence, recognizing at a deep, primal level that you are not a weak, reactive man who can be easily swayed by flattery, manipulated by guilt, or emotionally destabilized by aggression, which instantly, automatically makes you a figure of immense authority, deep trustworthiness, and profound unspoken respect. Manipulators, narcissists, energy vampires, emotionally volatile individuals will naturally, quickly, and quietly filter themselves completely out of your life, realizing very quickly that you offer them absolutely zero psychological nourishment, that their standard tricks shatter against your stillness, while high-value, secure, intelligent, and genuinely powerful individuals will be magnetically, irresistibly drawn to your calm, grounded, and immensely stable energy. Recognizing you immediately as a rare, equal, and highly valuable peer in a chaotic world completely overrun by reactive, emotionally volatile, and deeply fragile children who are merely masquerading in adult bodies. Furthermore, the massive, almost incalculable amount of cognitive bandwidth, creative focus, and vital masculine energy that you previously wasted, drained, and entirely threw away on harboring useless grudges. Meticulously planning verbal revenge scenarios in the shower, exhaustively defending your fragile ego to people who do not matter, and agonizingly worrying about the shifting, meaningless opinions of the faceless mob will suddenly, dramatically be liberated, providing you with an overwhelming tidal wave surge of focus, relentless drive, and crystal clear mental clarity that you can now directly, aggressively channel into your actual life's purpose, the building of your career, the perfection of your physical training, and the uncompromising cultivation of genuine, undeniable excellence, accelerating your tangible progress in life to a degree that will seem almost supernatural and magical to the average people who are still hopelessly trapped in the exhausting, endless cycle of perpetual reactivity. This is the ultimate, glorious, and deeply liberating promise of Stoicism and the profound, enduring legacy of Marcus Aurelius. The earth-shattering realization that true, unadulterated freedom, true, unquestionable dominance, and true, legendary power are never ever found in the frantic, futile, and exhausting attempt to control, dominate, or manipulate the chaotic, unpredictable external world, but are found entirely, exclusively, and beautifully in the absolute, unquestioned, and total mastery of your own internal responses. The profound, quiet realization that you are the sole, dictatorial, and absolute author of your own emotional state, and that absolutely no one on this earth, no matter how loud they yell, how arrogantly they posturing, how deeply disrespectful they may attempt to be, or how much worldly power they may temporarily wield, possesses the actual ability to make you feel anything, to alter your internal weather, or to degrade your spirit, without your explicit, voluntary, and entirely conscious consent. You must deeply, permanently internalize the absolute fact that your mind is your most sacred, your most valuable, and your only truly irreplaceable asset, the only true possession you actually have full ownership over in this fleeting, transient, and inherently unpredictable life. And allowing a disrespectful fool, a jealous peer, or an angry stranger to enter it, trample all over your peace, and cause emotional chaos is the ultimate, most pathetic act of self-betrayal, akin to willingly, happily handing the heavy iron keys of a pristine, heavily fortified, and fully provisioned castle directly to a filthy, raving, disease-ridden lunatic simply because he knocked aggressively and loudly on the front gate. You must therefore post an elite, unsleeping guard at the gates of your perception, ruthlessly, cold-bloodedly analyzing every single external impression, every incoming insult, every piece of tragic news, and even every seductive compliment that attempts to cross the threshold into your consciousness, violently turning away absolutely anything that does not serve your highest good, your moral character, or your ultimate purpose, and remaining completely blissfully indifferent to the screaming noise of the masses, recognizing with absolute mathematical certainty that the loud, shifting opinions of a million blind fools do not add up to a single microscopic ounce of objective truth or personal value. When you achieve this elite, vanishingly rare level of psychological invulnerability, you become truly dangerous in the absolute best, most noble possible sense of the word. A man who simply cannot be bought with cheap flattery, cannot be coerced by the heavy weight of social pressure, cannot be intimidated by loud, primal aggression, and cannot be broken by sudden tragedy. A man who operates every single day from a place of such deep, unshakable, and terrifying internal security that he is completely, wildly free to take massive, calculated risks, speak his genuine, unfiltered truth, and aggressively pursue his grandest, most audacious ambitions without feeling even the slightest paralyzing whisper of fear regarding failure, rejection, or public humiliation, because he knows, with the absolute certainty of gravity, that even if he loses absolutely everything in the external world, his wealth, his status, his comforts, and his reputation, his inner citadel remains absolutely intact, unbreached, immaculate, and entirely ready to calmly, methodically rebuild from the ashes. Consider for a moment the stark historical reality of Marcus Aurelius, a man who did not theorize about stress from the comfort of a modern office, but who dealt daily with the most extreme, crushing, and unimaginable pressures a human being could possibly endure, including devastating betrayals by his most trusted and beloved generals, a horrifying global plague that decimated his population and his legions, massive, endless, incredibly bloody wars on the freezing borders of his empire, the agonizing, heart-wrenching deaths of multiple young children, a wife rumored to be unfaithful, and a vast populace that was often ungrateful, rebellious, and deeply demanding. Yet, despite carrying the actual, literal weight of the entire known world on his tired shoulders, he absolutely refused to let the external chaos corrupt his internal character, retreating each night by the flickering light of an oil lamp into the private, sacred sanctuary of his journal, to remind himself over and over again of the fleeting, dreamlike nature of human life, the absolute insignificance of petty human drama against the backdrop of eternity, and the absolute, uncompromising necessity of maintaining a calm, rational, and completely unreactive mind in the face of maximum adversity. If a man facing the potential violent collapse of the greatest, most powerful empire in human history could somehow find the immense internal discipline to remain composed, completely and utterly refusing to react to the massive, existential, life-or-death threats surrounding him with panic, despair, or uncontrolled anger, then you, sitting in the relative safety and unimaginable comfort of the modern world, possess the absolute, undeniable, and biological capacity to remain completely unbothered by the trivial, microscopic, and utterly meaningless inconveniences of your daily life, the mildly rude emails from your boss, the bad traffic on your commute, the ungrateful clients who complain about pricing, the delayed flights, and the petty, insecure, highly forgettable insults of the insignificant, passing people who briefly cross your path and then fade into oblivion. It is a profound, life-altering, and entirely paradigm-shifting realization to finally understand that the vast, overwhelming majority of all human suffering is entirely, completely self-inflicted, generated not by the actual objective events themselves, which are entirely neutral, but by our frantic, desperate, and completely unnecessary mental resistance to those events. Our childish, ego-driven demand that the complex, ancient universe conform perfectly to our specific tiny expectations, and our subsequent exhausting, deeply pathetic tantrums when it inevitably, naturally refuses to do so. The exact moment you decide to stop reacting, the moment you finally drop the heavy, exhausting armor of resistance and simply, radically accept reality exactly as it presents itself in this very second, without adding the toxic, heavy, and completely fictional layer of your own emotional commentary. The suffering ceases instantly. The heavy iron chains fall away from your wrists, and you are left standing in a place of pure, unadulterated, and blinding power, a state of profound, crystalline clarity where you can clearly, perfectly see the optimal, most strategic path forward without being blinded by the thick, choking fog of ego, fear, anxiety, or burning anger. This is the exact, precise state of mind required to execute the kind of massive, decisive, and history-altering actions that build generational empires, create immense, unbreakable wealth, and forge legendary, immortal legacies. Because while the weak, reactive man is completely, hopelessly consumed by frantically putting out small, meaningless emotional fires and arguing with fools over trivialities, the strong, non-reactive man is calmly, methodically, and relentlessly building a life of absolute greatness, completely undisturbed by the heat, the noise, the complaints, and the chaos swirling hopelessly around him. You must embrace the powerful, deeply liberating, and highly counterintuitive truth that silence in the face of provocation is not empty, submissive, or weak. Rather, it is incredibly full. It is full of answers. It is full of withheld strength. It is full of unspoken threat, and it is the ultimate, undeniable, and terrifying proof of a superior, highly disciplined mind. Because the man who feels the constant, burning, neurotic need to speak, to over-explain, to aggressively defend himself, and to verbally react to every single negative stimulus is a man who is secretly terrified of the silence, terrified of what dark truths he might actually find if he is ever forced to sit entirely alone with his own unmedicated thoughts, without the distracting, comforting noise of external conflict and drama to keep him occupied. The truly powerful man, the modern Stoic emperor, not only survives in the silence, he absolutely thrives in it. He actively seeks it out, he cultivates it as his natural habitat, and he wields it like a massive, devastating, and invisible broadsword, cleanly and effortlessly through the desperate, chaotic, attention-seeking noise of the modern world with the cold, precise, and absolute certainty of a man who knows exactly who he is, perfectly understands exactly what he controls, and completely, utterly, and permanently refuses to ever hand his psychological power over to anyone for any reason ever again. Therefore, the next time you are faced with blatant provocation, the next time an envious coworker, a toxic partner, or a loud, aggressive stranger attempts to drag you down into the agonizing, familiar, and filthy mud of emotional reactivity, I want you to consciously, vividly visualize the heavy iron gates of your inner citadel slamming shut with a deafening crash, locking the chaos outside. I want you to physically feel the deep grounding, immense weight of your own slow, controlled breath anchoring you to the earth. And I want you to look directly at the person attacking you, not with anger, which is a sign of weakness, not with fear, which is a sign of submission, and not even with the desire to destroy them, which is a sign of insecurity, but rather with the calm, detached, and absolutely impenetrable stillness of a massive marble statue. A towering, ancient monument to psychological dominance that completely, totally, and utterly refuses to break, bend, or react in the slightest to the frantic, meaningless, and pathetic storm raging hopelessly around its base. In this profound, quiet, infinitely heavy moment of absolute non-reaction, you will experience the greatest, most intoxicating, and most undeniable surge of genuine power a human being can possibly, conceivably feel. The incredible, life-altering realization that you have finally, truly conquered the only territory that actually matters, the only empire that can never, ever be overthrown, and the only domain where absolute, dictatorial, and eternal control is actually possible. The magnificent, unbreakable, and perfectly sovereign empire of your own incredibly powerful mind. As you continue to walk this elevated, solitary path, deeply internalizing and practicing the ancient, battle-tested wisdom of the Roman emperor day after day, year after year, your entire life will inevitably, beautifully transform into a living, breathing testament of unyielding strength, proving definitively to a frail, emotionally chaotic, and deeply sick society that there is another, higher way to exist. A superior way characterized by an ironclad will, profound, unshakable inner peace, and the kind of commanding, silent, gravitational authority that forces the world to naturally bow to your reality, not through violence, not through manipulation. and not through loud coercion, but through the sheer, undeniable, and overwhelming gravity of your fully mastered self, permanently unlocking a tier of absolute psychological freedom that forever elevates you above the trivial noise, establishing your absolute, unquestioned reign over the kingdom within, and ensuring that from this day forward, until the very end of your life, no matter what tragedies, insults, or chaotic events transpire in the unpredictable, swirling theater of life, your composure remains eternally undisturbed, your focus remains razor-sharp, your emotional walls remain unbreached, and your legendary legacy remains completely untouchable.